to acknowledge the presence of the panel members and also the participants. So I know the elephant in the room is about exchange rate volatility. Some may want to call it a crisis, but from our perspective, we don't see it as a crisis per se, but as exchange rate volatility. And I will explain why we call it exchange rate volatility. So to start, maybe we need to put everything into context. What causes exchange rate volatility? There are two structural issues or two structural factors that may cause an exchange rate to be volatile or that may cause exchange rate crisis. The first structural issue is fiscal deficits, if they are monetized by the central bank. The other structural factor is the current account, if it's in a deficit. So given these two structural issues, what is the position in the case of Zimbabwe? If you look at fiscal deficits, government has been running a sustainable fiscal position since 2019. That's ruling out the issue of monetization, because they have not been coming to the central bank for monetizing the deficit. Then when you look at the current account deficit, since 2019, the country has been running a current account surplus. Unlike in the previous years, I think for over a decade, from 2000 to 2018, the country has been running unsustainable current account deficits in excess of around 20%. But since 2019, we have seen the country running a current account surplus. So when a country has got a surplus, ideally that should lead to stable exchange rate dynamics. But the question is, why is our exchange rate not stable in an environment where the current account is in a surplus position? So the challenge we are facing is that of supply and demand dynamics, especially with regards to foreign currency. In the case of Zimbabwe, we also have a challenge of the dual currency. When you have got a dual currency, it means people have got a choice between a hard currency and a soft currency. And ideally, given such a choice, everyone is bound to choose the hard currency. So Mr. Mabasa said in other countries, he said in South Africa they prefer the rand, in Botswana they prefer the pula. It's not true. If you are to put a hard currency and a soft currency, everyone will choose a hard currency. So for a currency to be used in a country, it's illegal tender. It means that government has to put some rules to legislate that that's the currency that should be used by that country. So what is the challenge in the case of Zimbabwe? Given the dual currency that we have, despite the current account surplus that we have been realizing since 2019, we have seen that demand for foreign currency is over and above the normal demand for foreign currency that we see in other countries. Because foreign currency ideally should be reserved for foreign payments. But in Zimbabwe, foreign currency is also used for domestic transactions and is also used as a store of value. So what we have is unlimited demand for foreign currency. So in such an environment where you have got unlimited demand for foreign currency, it doesn't matter what level of money supply we have. Because even if someone has got just some little local currency, they try by all means to lock value in a hard currency. And in such an environment, you see the exchange rate continuing to depreciate. But since here we are trying to look for solutions, what can we do under such an environment? How do we stabilize the exchange rate in an environment where we have got dual currency? What we need in such an environment is to come up with a solution where you make people indifferent between holding the hard currency and holding the soft currency. And for you to be able to achieve that, it means you must be able to guarantee convertibility. This is exactly what we did in 2009. When you talk of dollarization, as Tony was talking in the morning, I think we need to put things into context. Everywhere and internationally, it's accepted that when you talk of dollarization, It is measured by the level of foreign currency deposits to total deposits in an economy. When you look at a period between 2009 and 2018, that ratio has been going down. It started at around 90%, which means when we started, we had 10% in the form of local currency, although it was just being called US dollars. By 2013, it had gone to around 45%. By 2016, it had gone to 12%, and it became unsustainable. So we also need to look at sustainability when we are recommending policies such as dollarization. Is it going to be sustainable? So it's something that we also need to look at. Then how do we ensure that there is indifference between holding the local currency and holding the US dollar? For you to do that, I know Tony is a professor of economics. In economics, they talk of a concept which is known as the uncovered interest rate parity. That is, you must be able to compensate the holders of local currency for exchange rate depreciation. So you must come up with a product that is able to compensate the holders of local currency for potential exchange rate depreciation. And this is what we have done with the gold-backed currency or the gold coins. Because anyone who is holding a gold coin or anyone who is holding a gold-backed currency, it means that you are compensated for potential exchange rate depreciation. And by so doing, you will become indifferent holding the US dollar or holding the gold-backed token. So exactly what we are trying to do is in line with what is expected even under economic theory. So with this remarks, maybe I can give to other people just to comment. Thank you.
Thank you, and good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It's a privilege to be here and to be part of this very important dialogue. I think we know the causes of the collapse of our currency, the causes of the collapse of our exchange rate. But I think what has happened from the 1st of May 2023 is unprecedented. It's an implosion of the abnormal. But when you look at the history of our country from 14 November 1997, when the Zimbabwean dollar collapsed by a factor of 70%, when you look at the collapse of our currency from 2006 to 2008, when you look at the collapse of our currency in May 2016, when we introduced the bond note on the 4th of May 2016, when you look at the collapse of our currency in October 2018, when on the 1st of October 2018, the Central Bank issued Exchange Control Directive RT 120 of 2018. When you look at February 2019, when the Reserve Bank enacted SI 33 of 2019, and the consequence, loss of value. When you look at the loss of value that followed in July of 2019, and then when you look at what has just happened on the 1st of May 2023, I think we have now institutionalized these implosions of abnormality. It's now normal. Economics moves in slumps and booms, but Zimbabwe has institutionalized these implosions of abnormality. The primary reason for the collapse of the currency, as it was in 1997, is the printing of money. It's the creation of, the creative creation of non-existent money. The monetization of fiscal deficits. We saw it in 1997 when we made a huge payout to war veterans and our currency collapsed. When I was preparing for this meeting, in the last 4 years, we have generated money supply of 12,000%. That is unprecedented. In old Eastern Europe, communist Europe, they will take you as a central bank governor and shoot you for generating such, instability. But when we say printing of money, we are misallocating it because we are then treating it as a monetary policy problem. It is not a monetary policy problem. It is a fiscal problem. It is the problem of a government that can't live within its means. I always say publicly that in economics, 1 minus 2, it can't. When 1 minus 2 becomes 1 minus 1, you've got a problem. You've got a problem, and that is the problem. That is the problem. So, yes, the immediate short-term solution, and I agree with Tony, is that we must dollarize. Repeal SI 33 of 2019, which became law, is Act number 17. Act number 7 of 2019. Dollarize, float the Zimbabwean, dollar. Remove export surrender requirements. Scrap the auction system. Scrap the gold coin. Those things we can do, but if we don't address the fundamental issue, we bastardize the US dollar in the way we've just bastardized it, in the way we bastardized our own currency, in the way we've bastardized every other currency, because the fundamental problem is that of a government that can live within its means. So you have a problem right now. Why the implosion of May 2023? The government increased the salary of civil servants by 100% in RTGS terms, and that was not budgeted for. There have been huge payouts that have been made. I saw the other day that judges have been paid $400,000. I saw today that even policemen have been paid huge amounts of money that have not been budgeted for. The good doctor speaks of balances on paper. They've never measured anything. And we know that from the reports of the Auditor General. The reports of the Auditor General have reflected beyond reasonable doubt that beyond the formal set of accounts, there is another set of informal accounts. So when the government closes its books and closes the tapes keep on running beyond Parliament, beyond public scrutiny. That is why, as I'm talking to you right now, there are 2 financial adjustment bills that are pending before Parliament. One of them is for $10.6 billion US that was spent by the government outside parliamentary scrutiny between 2016 and 2018. As I'm talking to you right now, there's a second financial adjustment bill of $103 billion that was spent outside parliamentary scrutiny. So what the government has done is to master the art of just spending money outside the formality of books that are audited by the Auditor General and Mrs. Chiri. But when you look at Mrs. Chiri's books, she reflects a serious, insatiable appetite for expenditure. In 2017, we had a budget deficit of $2.7 billion US. And I want to comment a bit on $2.7 billion. And this is money that is literally stolen in inverted commas. It's not accounted for. On the 27th of December 2017, $1.5 billion was stolen on that day. It still was on Christmas Day. 2018, $3.5 billion US. $3.5 billion US. That's 2018. This is audited official government audit books. 2019, $6.3 billion. In 2020 books, the government, the Ministry of Finance, tempered and interfered with the Auditor General's report. It did not disclose the extent of the unallocated reserve used by the Ministry of Finance, so we don't know the figures. But I'm sure it's over $8 billion. That is the problem. That is the problem. We can't live within our own means. So it doesn't matter ultimately whatever currency you will use as long as you have not addressed the fundamental issue of a government that can live within its means. Because the challenge here is not so much the deficit. The challenge here is the deficit that is being monetized by creative, illegal means. When we demonetized the Zimbabwean dollar in 2019, the local debt in the form of treasury bills was 12 billion US dollars. 12 billion, you remember that, you know what I'm talking about. 12 billion US dollars, that's a lot of money. And at that stage, for the first time in the history of our country, domestic debt was more than foreign sovereign debt. That can't happen, it's not allowed to happen. In old communist Europe, they will shoot you. I mean, how does domestic debt exceed foreign debt? But that's where we were in 2019. So I would propose the following, therefore, because we want to talk about solutions. In the short term, in the very short term, let's dollarize. Let's repeal Section 22 of the Finance Act imposed by Act number 7 of 2019, which was SI 33 of 2019. So let's dollarize. Let's float the Zimbabwean dollar. The Zimbabwean dollar, we need it. We can't demonetize it. So we need the Zimbabwean dollar, but let's float it so that it finds a market rate. And I agree with Chairman Ozobina. The exchange rate will always find its natural resting place. I go to East Africa, the Kenyan shilling, the Ugandan shilling, the Tanzanian shilling always trade constantly at 1:6,000. Doesn't matter whether you're going winter or summer. It's a high exchange rate, but it's stable. People can live. You can go in a bank in Kampala, you can go in a bank in Nairobi, you can go in a bank in Kisumu. They will ask you, do you want US dollars or shillings or Kenyan shillings or Ugandan shillings? You get whatever currency you want because it's a stable currency. So let's float it. Number 3, as I keep on saying, let's scrap export surrender requirements. Let's scrap export surrender requirements. Let's scrap the auction floor. Let's scrap this gold coin, which is just but an instrument of arbitrage. Number 4, let's deal with corruption. This country is bleeding US $3 billion in the form of corruption, what we've been calling in Parliament euphemistically illicit financial flows. And the biggest threat to our country is actually corruption. The biggest existential threat we face in this country is actually corruption. This country is so rich, we've got 63 minerals. Look at what we're doing with lithium right now. Lithium is the new black gold. Everyone is just coming and taking it, coming and taking it. Look at our platinum reserves. Look at our diamonds. At one stage, with the 50 largest reserves of diamonds with nothing to show for it. Compare Zimbabwe and Botswana. Botswana has got one mineral called diamond. If you go to Francistown right now, you will not recognize it. But look at Zimbabwe, this 64 million. We are breeding poverty where others are breeding gross capital formation. Number 4, let's deal with fiscal ill-discipline. Let's see, have reforms that consolidate fiscal consolidation. So I propose that we amend the Public Finance Management Act so that, and also the Public Debt Act, so that number 1, we put a threshold on the deficit that a government can maintain. What is the deficit? Maybe 2%, maybe 3%. Because any government has to have kachikweretu, kana kuti Zimbabwe nako kachikweretu. But $1 million, which can be $10. You understand? So let's put a limit. I would propose 3%. But let's put criminal sanctions to any official, whether you're a minister, whether you're a permanent secretary, whether you're a reserve bank governor, who exceeds this threshold. Let's revisit you with the criminal sanctions. Don't let me got 6 per next door. Number 4, let's restore the old Section 49 of the Reserve Bank Act that I put in the Reserve Bank Act in 2010. What I said in that proposal, in that Section 49 was that the Reserve Bank can't lend money which is not backed by reserves. So in other words, the Reserve Bank can create money. So I put that Section 49. So let's go back to that section 49, that the Reserve Bank can lend money unless it's backed by reserves. Because when the Reserve Bank does that, it's now borrowing hot air. And that hot air, you then know it in the name of a bearer check, or a bond note, or an RTGS dollar. Let's stop the Reserve Bank from creating fiat money. Because we know what fiat money does. Fiat money is bad money, according to Gretcham's law. Bad money displaces good money. Number 5, let's remove, I think it's section 11 or 13 of the Reserve Bank Act that allows the Reserve Bank to lend money to the central government. Why should we have a law that permits a central government from borrowing money from a broke, undercapitalized central bank? Because that provision then forces the Reserve Bank to commit a bank heist by stealing ordinary money from depositors. Because when the central bank pretends to be borrowing from the central bank, which knows it's broke, it's not borrowing from the central bank, it's borrowing from ordinary deposits. So let's remove that law. Let's remove that law. So in short, what I'm proposing is that let's deal with the actual problem, and the actual problem being fiscal ill-discipline, lack of fiscal consolidation. I so propose, Mr. Chairman.
Thanks, Andy, very much indeed. Very good to be here, but difficult to add, I think, to the comments already made by this esteemed panel. I'm surrounded by ex-ministers of finance and doctors and professors of economics. I think we have to face there's a fundamental problem that wherever it might emanate from, whether there is a fiscal surplus or deficit or whatever, the fact is, at the last published money supply figures were 300–400% increase over the past year, which is just extraordinary, even by Venezuelan standards or wherever. So we have to accept there's a fundamental central problem, which is going to lead to instability in currency. It's not just the fact that I want $1 in my pocket rather than an RTGS. We have to face up to those facts and before we can find any solutions. It's difficult to argue with the sentiment that we are going to dollarization. And I mean, dollarization, it has its own problems, which we saw last time around, but it also provides the opportunity, as I think Tendai found when he took the hot seat, of essentially a reset. That we start again from scratch. So it does have that benefit. I mean, I do recall that first month when I received it, I don't think we even received salaries, we received allowances, we called them, because no one quite knew if they were there to stay or not. So $200 I think mine was, and I was very, very grateful for it at that point, that I had real dollars. I couldn't believe it in my account at that stage, and that I could draw it out. But I think we may be going to dollarization, but that's still a journey, even if it is potentially a short one. And we need to manage that. You know, we still do have Zim dollars in circulation. I can't see anyone out there who's going to come and buy my Zim dollar deposits at anything approaching even the current rate of exchange. So what do we do with them in the meantime? And I'll bet you the borrowers of Zim dollars, they're not going to agree to turn those into US dollars without a legal fight. Good business for the lawyers, but that's, again, they're not going to accept that, I don't think. So we can either just inflate them away as we did last time, or we need to try and manage them and at least deliver some value to those people who have no option but to receive those Zim dollars. And obviously, first and foremost, get stability on the money supply side. But we have to build up some. We've already heard about trust and confidence, and I'd suggest, apart from controlling those levers, we need transparency. I think Tony's already referred to deliberately hiding the rate of inflation. That's just crazy by any standards, particularly when you put something in that just doesn't even make any mathematical, let alone economic sense. It really doesn't. We need to publish those money supply figures promptly. I think when I last looked at March was available. the banks have to produce their numbers, I think it's within like 7 days of month end or something like that. So we could have those figures out probably within a couple of weeks of month end if we really tried. And we should be trying at the moment, so that people understand where we are, where we're going. So that there are little things that we can do at the very least to do our best to save the Zim dollar. And I am a believer in a local currency, but at worst to manage the transition sort of in an equitable manner towards dollarization, if that's where we need to go. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. I find myself sort of in general agreement with what has been said. I think that there is a discussion, and certainly the good doctor from the Reserve Bank, you know, I rather, what crossed my mind was the old, as he was speaking, was the old phrase, dialogue of the deaf. Because some of the things he was saying were just not that seems to me to be factually accurate. For instance, he himself at the Reserve Bank publishes a table 2, which tells you how much the Reserve Bank is lending to government, and it's there. You know, there's no point in arguing about it. It's there. It's gone up to 100 billion in the last 3 months or something like that, up until March I'm talking about. So what I'm sort of trying to say here is at the end of his talk, I would have asked the question, well, so what is the alternative? And I assume the alternative is to go on as we are. I say that is unsustainable. He says there's no crisis. I think everyone else in the room thinks there is a crisis. 70%, 80% devaluation in 3 or 4 weeks. If that's not a crisis, I don't know how you would describe it. But let me not just criticize him. I think we ought to be aware that we do, in my opinion anyway, we do not have a choice. It's not a question of saying, oh, well, let's dollarize, or let's do this, or let's do that. I think we've got beyond that. I think we've got to dollarization, and we have now, as Simon just said, try and manage the transition as painlessly and as efficiently as possible. And that is the challenge. And, you know, not running around and shoving guys in jail and freezing their accounts and then unfreezing their accounts, saying they're not trafficking in gold when you know they are, and all these sorts of things. Forget all that. Let's get away from that sort of nonsense and just face up to this is the reality, and this is how we might manage our way out of it. But I'm afraid, and missing all too, and again it comes through from a number of contributions, is the belief that there isn't a mindset problem. There is a mindset problem. I think Andy's referred to it. The mindset is there. People do not want to hold the local currency. For whatever reason, they don't want to. And how do you change that mindset? And the only way is, I think Tendai suggested, was you have the two currencies running alongside, and at some point, hopefully, which is up to a point happened in Mozambique, at some point, hopefully, people will say, no, I'm quite happy to hold the local currency rather than the foreign currency. It's more convenient. At the moment, it's the very opposite. It's more convenient to hold the foreign currency. It's easier to spend that than it is to spend the local currency, and so on. So I think it's just a question of and if the roundtable is going to send a recommendation to government, I think that, you know, let's accept the reality and move on. Draw a line and say that's the reality. We're going to move on from there. There's been a lot of talk about dialogue and so on. You know, I've heard talk of dialogue for so long. If it's a dialogue of the deaf, it doesn't get us very far forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Andy. I think before I go to the gold coin, let me start by this issue of dollarization. I know Honorable Beattie is very passionate about dollarization. He has offered his solution. But just to comment that the solution from Honorable Beattie is exactly what government is doing now. because he has said let's dollarize, but at the same time he has said let's float the SIM dollar. In other words, he's acknowledging the coexistence of the SIM dollar and the US dollar, but the SIM dollar finding its market-determined exchange rate, which is akin to the dual currency system that we are running. But his point is that let the SIM dollar find its true value, which is what the government has actually done now, which we've done as the Reserve Bank, to ensure that the exchange rate is market determined. And you agree with me that from the last auction that we held, the wholesale auction to banks, the exchange rate has moved to eliminate the huge premium that we observed in the recent weeks, which had gone over 100%. But now, if we take the current exchange rate, and also given the fact that the 10% over and above the willing buyer, willing seller is still in place, you find that the premium is gone down significantly, I think to less than 10%. So going forward, we are saying we are going to continue with the SIM dollar finding its true market value in a market-determined way, but under a dual currency environment. But given that we are running a dual currency system, we also need to take into consideration the fact that people, they want their local currency to be preserved. And you find that the common practice is that they go to the parallel market to buy US dollars as a way of protecting their value. Why do they go there? Because normally foreign currency is sold through banks, through bureau de changes, mainly for foreign payments. That's the standard everywhere. You can't go even when you're in South Africa to say I want foreign currency just as a store of value or just to use for any other purpose. You have to justify it. You have to submit a bona fide invoice that you want to make foreign payment. So that's the common standard here. So those people who are buying foreign currency on the parallel market, mainly it's for store of value, mainly it's for meeting domestic transactions. But those who want foreign currency for foreign payments, the auction system has been open to everyone who want to make foreign payments. It has been open to individuals, SMEs, big businesses, and so on. So the foreign currency is also available through the banks now because we are selling to them through the wholesale auction for foreign payments. Now, how then do we incentivize people, those who are holding foreign currency, which they are buying from the parallel market? Then we need to come up with an alternative instrument. That's the purpose of the gold coin now. Instead of you going to the parallel market, which is an illegal market, we are saying we have created an alternative platform in the form of gold coins, where you can lock the value of your local currency in the gold coins. Then the limitation is only that it depends on the amount of gold that we have in the vault. What we have observed as a Reserve Bank is that the demand for the gold coins is very high. I think around 50,000 per week. So we have not been able to meet the demand. What we have also seen is that those who have bought the gold coins, they are not even redeeming the gold coins even after they expire or after the holding period of 180 days. There are very few who are selling, which testifies to the fact that the demand and appetite for gold coins is very high. We have also seen it with the recently introduced the gold-backed token. The demand is also very high. It's only that the limitation is on the quantum of gold that we are holding as a Reserve Bank. So we are happy with the instrument because it's actually playing the same role as holding foreign currency. Then you talked about why do we fear to dollarize. As I have indicated initially, that when we are talking of dollarization, first of all, we need to define what exactly we are talking about. When we say fully dollarized, we are saying all the deposits in the banking sector, they are 100% foreign currency. Is it sustainable? The question obviously is no, it's not sustainable. We have been there before. From 2009 to 2018, we dollarized. But we also saw some of the challenges with the dollarization, mainly to do with competitiveness. Our industry was not competitive. Find that most of our shops, they were stocked with foreign imports or imported goods. Capacity utilization was very low. But at the time when we introduced the local currency, we saw capacity utilization going up significantly. We saw aggregate demand going up significantly. But what we only need to do is to stabilize the exchange rate. I think that's the challenge we are facing. So the solutions that we need in this forum is to come up with strategies on how best to stabilize the exchange rate in a dual currency environment. We know that the dual currency is not sustainable, but that's the regime that we are operating with at the moment. So we need to find solutions on how best we can stabilize the exchange rate under such an environment. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Money supply, it really matters because it's a matter of supply and demand. But when we talk of supply, it's foreign currency. So we have to look at this in two fronts, both the supply and the demand. So what we have seen in the past months is that supply of foreign currency has also gone down significantly. We have seen foreign currency receipts going down. I think compared to last year, they've gone down by around 5%, mainly because commodity prices of our key minerals have also been going down, especially if you look at the price of platinum, it's also gone down. So we have seen significant decline in foreign currency, but we hope that going forward, we are going to recover the trend that we've been seeing in the past. So as the foreign currency receipts improves, then we also expect the situation to also improve. Then commenting on the money supply, yes, indeed, we have seen money supply increasing, but our money supply has got two components now, which is our total broad money. When we talk of broad money, mainly we are looking at total deposits in the banking sector. The currency in circulation is not that significant now, so mainly it's the total deposit in the banking sector, the bulk of which is the foreign currency. So out of broad money of around 3.5 trillion, the local currency component, as at the end of April, it was around $1.4 trillion. So if we are to divide the $1.4 trillion in the system with the exchange rate of around 6,000, I think you can get something maybe less than 600 million or 500 million. So we are saying that's the quantum of foreign currency that we need to wipe out or to eliminate all the local currency in the system. So in an environment where we have got foreign currency deposits of in excess of 1.4 billion and local currency equivalent to around 600 million, without other factors, some of them are behavioral factors, surely we should have stable exchange rate dynamics. So that's why we continue to say some of the factors that are also driving the exchange rate, they are not necessarily to do with money supply. Because if you look at the figures, they say they don't point to that, but some of them are to do with behavioral. Then it then comes to the issue of why then the FIU is trying to criminalize. We find that some of the behaviors, they are not actually expected. When the exchange rate is around maybe 5,000 or 6,000, then you find someone putting an exchange rate of 12,000. Surely that will end up being a self-fulfilling prophecy and affecting the whole economy. And in such an environment, I think to restore sanity, I think a stick is actually needed to deal with such malpractices. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I will start with the issues raised by the chairman Dr. Lin, and then I'll come to the broader issues. Theoretically and legally, it's quite easy to bring a private member's bill. But if you don't have the numbers, then you have a problem. You have a problem. So it becomes a question of numbers. In this current parliament, the 9th parliament, there's a member who has brought a private member's bill trying to establish a council for private investigators and security guards, trying to regulate that industry. He's a former general. So we supported that bill. We supported that bill because we want to establish the president of a private member's bill. It has gone through the National Assembly. It has not gone through the Senate. I hope it will go through the Senate, and I hope the president can sign it. Because if that happens, then it will be easier in the future to say, but we have a president before. That will be the first time it will have happened in the history of this country. In the past, we've tried to do that. Some time ago, in the 8th Parliament, Honorable Innocent Gonese tried to bring a private member's bill to amend the Local Government Act, and that was shut down because of lack of numbers. So if you have the numbers, you can do it. And I also think the issue that will be in that bill, nobody was concerned about the issue of regulation of the security sector industry, so the private security sector industry. So people supported that. I think it will also be very difficult for, let's say you were to bring a child protection bill outlawing child marriages, increasing the age of sexual consent to the constitutional position of 18. Members will be found very difficult not to accept that, and you get support from both sides of the House. So it's a question of numbers and also the content. And the second issue, the question of a referendum. In terms of the current law, the president, we've got a referendum act where the president in his sole discretion decides what issue to put to the referendum. And the last time that that act was put in use was in 2000, when that constitution, the draft constitution produced by the Chichikao Siko Commission, was put to the referendum. So there's nothing that prevents citizens lobbying the president, lobbying the parliament to say put the issue of currency to referendum, and it's such an important issue. So let me come back to the issue at hand, the issue of monetary policy, exchange rate, and so on. I think that accountability is important. If you read the Justice Smith Commission of Inquiry into the insurance and pension sector, US $5.86 billion was lost. $5.86 billion. Now we are talking about the loss of $400,000. In 2019, I had a trust account in my law firm with $500,000 which was lost through the machinations of a central bank that spent over $2 million, $3 million in a campaign that sought to persuade us that the bond note was geje with the RTGS dollars. I mean, it's irresponsible. I read with great disquiet the monetary policy statement of the central bank of January 2023. The passage which they were justifying the introduction of the blended rate of inflation, and I agree with the tone. It's unheard of. I'm representing clients who have taken that statutory instrument to the High Court because it doesn't make sense. You calculate, he's a professor of economics, you calculate inflation in one currency. There's no dog's breakfast called blended inflation. Dogs won't type that breakfast. It doesn't work. But anyway, I read with disquiet the Reserve Bank actually celebrating the fact that the dominant currency in use was actually the Zimbabwean dollar, 70% and 75%. And I said to myself, but this is what we told you in 2019 when you de-dollarized, that conditions for de-dollarization did not exist, and that because of historical factors, Zimbabweans did not have faith in their own currency and they will never use it. And we pointed out that as a matter of fact, there is no country in the history of the world which involuntarily dollarized like we did in 2007, 2008, which has been able to dollarize again. It doesn't happen, it's a psychological thing. Because the currency at the end of the day is trust. You can do whatever you want at the Ministry of Finance, at the Reserve Bank. A currency at the end of the day is trust. And this Zimbabwean currency was caught in flagrante. Flagrante is a Latin term which means caught red-handed. A husband caught with Mrs. So-and-so. That is what happened to our currency. It doesn't happen. Trust is gone. Trust is gone. So we shouldn't have de-dollarized when conditions for de-dollarization did not exist, and we are paying the price. And for the central bank to sit now and say, well, we are now dollarizing, we are using dual currency, when it has just spent close to $3 billion pumped into an auction system which has served the elites and the who is who of Zimbabwe, not industry and commerce. This country has nothing to show for the auction system. I think that's not good enough. That is why some of us are actually proposing that we actually don't need a central bank. Because this central bank has been at the center of all the violent episodes of economic implosions that I've talked about, which have now become institutionalized. Whether it's 2008, whether it's now, the central bank has been at the center of it. Do we really need it? I submit that we don't need a central bank. I submit that we need a currency board. Just a currency board stripped of everything. Because what has killed this country is quasi-fiscal activities. The printing of money. 12,000% is a lot of money. 400% in 1 year, May 2022, May 23, you print 400%. It's not good enough. So we can't keep on reproducing. History. There has to be responsibility. There has to be accountability. I agree, and I want to emphasize that those of us who are calling for dollarization regard it as a transitional measure. We regard it as a transitional measure because this economy is too small and uncompetitive to use the US dollar as a permanent currency. What is the long-term future? The long-term future, in my view, is that we should go regional integration. We should be part of SADC, and SADC should have a monetary union in its own currency, which probably would be the rand by another name. I don't care, I'm not a nationalist. I'm a Zimbabwean patriot, but not a nationalist. There's a huge difference. So, or let's go the African route. The ASFTA, the African Free Trade Area, is coming on board and coming on board strongly. There's no point, in my view, in having a trade union without a monetary union. Let's have a monetary union. Let's have African integration. Can you imagine Africa 50 years from now? We are the fastest growing country in terms of population, but we're the poorest. We have 20% of the world's population, but only 3% of the world's trade. But if we integrate, that will give us some chance. So, to me, the ultimate solution is not to dollarize this economy, because dollarizing is too expensive. It's also not to use the rand, because the rand itself is too volatile. But let's have a regional currency, and there are steps that are a precondition to the establishment of a monetary union. All the countries must have monetary convergence and fiscal convergence. That means there are certain things that Zimbabwe has to do. We're the sick man of the region. There are certain things that we have to do. Our debt to GDP ratios, our inflation figures are inconsistent with good behavior, with normal behavior. Let's become normal. Let's put Jackson material so that we are fit enough to be an equal member of an integrated SADC or an integrated African Union. RECs have become so important. Look at COMESA and the East African Union. Look at the West African Union. The only REC that is weak on monetary France is the SADC region. And part of the problem is that South Africa actually doesn't want a monetary union. I spoke with Pravin Gordhan at a poor hotel called Birchwood in South Africa on the 10th of July 2010. And he said, we don't want it because they are already having the benefits of a monetary union because the rand is fungible across the region. The rand is the second most fungible currency in our region after the US. So why do they need a formal union where they have to account to other countries and share seniority revenue when they're already benefiting it? You understand? And what I said to Pravin at the time was that, look, you are presiding over a global economy but with nationalist eyes. You are seeing this economy with the eyes of a South African instead of seeing this in a globalized, with a globalized lens. And that's a problem. But to me, that's the future. Let's have a SADC monetary union, because the US dollar in the long term is not sustainable.
Now, sorry, before you go, Honourable, we'll have the final question, and very, very brief if you can. I was also asked about potential referendum.
Yes, I've answered that and said the president has got the powers.
So
in terms of that,
only
yeah. And also, I think Parliament can cause a question to be put to a referendum if Parliament adopts that that resolution.
Okay.
So petition in Parliament, I've seen that in the last few years, citizens have been petitioning Parliament. I urge business in particular to use Parliament, because it is a very powerful institution.